I think I'll condense my publicly appropriate opening comments and sort of thank Dave and Dane for being with us. And Dane, I'm sure you've seen a little bit on this, and you know, in your role with us, and then in your current role, I probably have a general understanding of what we're doing. But our intent is to gather some good comments in a couple sessions open to the public as part of our update to the 2016 long-range transportation plan. And I don't know if you'll be able to see the participant list, but in addition to our consultant team from Lockmuir, you've got a couple familiar planning department faces on the call, being Emily Pinkston and Laura, and of course myself. So I would say, you know, Laura, if you want to go ahead and make a couple opening comments, I think that's probably appropriate. And then I think, given our small numbers, why don't we just, Katie and Sharif, have you roll into the information we've got to share, and then get to some discussion.
Certainly.
Well, I'm just thinking, Dane works for an MPO, and everybody else knows what an MPO is. But I will say a few words about CAMPO. So CAMPO is the MPO in the Columbus area. It's part of the Columbus and Bartholomew County Planning Department. The policy board is the decision-making body. The board's primary purpose is to oversee the planning process and to program funding for projects that are ultimately selected. Once this process is complete, each project is managed by the appropriate jurisdiction, and that would be either the city engineer's office or the county engineer's office. In developing the long-range plan, CAMPO focuses on creating a vision for our transportation future and on creating policies and strategies to support that vision. The long-range plan is the basis for short-range planning and programming that comes later and takes place on a 2-year cycle. So one of the most important things about developing the long-range transportation plan is getting your public input. It's very important. We need your help to determine the improvements that will be made over the next several years. And now I'd like to introduce the steering committee. I mean, not the steering committee, the consultant group. And Sharif Ullah is the project manager. Katie Shackelford is also on the team, and Chris Beard. So I'll pass it off.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. So as Laura mentioned, I'm Sharifullah. I'm the project manager for this project. With me, I have Katie Shackelford, who is acting as the engagement lead for this project. She is also a senior transportation planner with us. And Chris Beard is taking care of the QCQA of this project. So with this, Katie, do you want to do a brief introduction?
Oh, certainly. Yes, my name is Katie Shackelford, and I am a transportation planner at Lockmuir Group. Happy to serve you here on the CAMPO Metropolitan Plan update.
And Chris?
Yeah, hi, I'm Chris Beard, and just happy to be continuing to work with Columbus, having been involved with the previous long-range plan as well as the development of the travel demand model.
Thank you. So before we go to the main slides, so we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the housekeeping issues. So if you are...
We can probably skip most of this, Sharif, given that there's only Dave and Dane.
Yeah, since it's being recorded, so like, you know, some of the stuff. So, all right. Yeah, you are right.
They can just ask questions. They don't have to worry about submitting them through the chat box.
Right, right. So like, you know, feel free to be engaged and so like, you know, through the chat box, through once we move to the conversation part. So we want your participation. And then if you have any sorts of difficulty by say like, you know, looking at the content or like, you know, with the sound or anything else, let us know. Next slide, please. Okay, so the project timeline. This project started in May of this year, and throughout this project, there will be more opportunities for public engagement. And so far, we are almost at the end of October, and we have completed task 2, 3, and 4. And we are almost done with the transportation infrastructure assessment. We also have completed the safety analysis. At this time, we are working on goals and performance measures and also updating the travel demand model. So we are hopeful that with the help of CAMPO and guidance from the steering committee, we will wrap it up in summer of 2021. So now to talk more about what is the purpose of this community meeting, I'm handing over to Katie. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharif. Now, I do know we have a light audience today, but as this meeting is being recorded, we're welcoming anybody who is seeing this for its first time in a recording. So we want to give you a little understanding of what's going on as well. So the purpose of today's community meeting is really fourfold. The first thing we're going to do is discuss the long-range transportation plan update process. Then we're going to share our LRTP goals with you, assess community transportation needs, and then gather your ideas about the future of transportation in Columbus. So why does engagement matter? I think there's a number of reasons, and many of you on this call can definitely agree with me that engagement is one of the most important elements to any plan. But we think engagement is especially important because it helps get the project done. Some things that we've called out: engagement increases the likelihood of project success. It creates more effective solutions and improves citizens' knowledge and skills in problem solving. It empowers and integrates people from different backgrounds to work together to solve a similar problem, and it creates a local network of community members who have similar interests and needs who may not have met each other before. This creates several opportunities for discussing concerns and learning more about the in-depth intricacies of the problems before they get out of hand. Also, engagement is a great opportunity to increase trust in community organizations and government, giving us more reasons to believe in the work that's going on between our elected officials, their staff, and our community. So with that, we're just going to do a brief overview of the 2016 SWOT, and SWOT stands for Strengths, Weaknesses, Opportunities, and Threats. A few weeks ago, we got together with the steering committee for this project and asked them to perform a SWOT analysis with us. And then we evaluated those results against the previous analysis from 2016. Just to give you a little bit of background on why a SWOT is a helpful tool, it is super simple, but it is very effective at getting things done and helping us organize our assets around the strengths and weaknesses within our community and the things outside of our community that might affect us in the future. So they come in two categories. It comes in internal, which means something that is owned and operated by the city. So a strength is something that is helpful and internal to the city, something that already exists. A weakness is something that is harmful and internal to the city, something that already exists. So imagine a strength is your strong community activism and volunteerism. That is certainly a strength. A weakness may be we don't have a lot of bicycle infrastructure in the community. Then we look at opportunities and threats. Opportunities and threats are both external features. There are things that are beyond your control, but they can be leveraged to either help or hurt you in the future. So opportunities are things that can have a positive impact on the world around you. Opportunities might be that funding streams become available or a collaboration is in the works. A threat is something that's beyond your control, but could negatively impact you or make your weaknesses more pronounced. Something that falls into the threats category is considered, COVID. COVID is a threat that is external and harmful to the things that we do. And learning about COVID and how to work around it, it has been an opportunity to grow as a team and through this planning process. So we evaluated the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And the only things I want to do with you now is just call out a couple changes. It's good to note that not a lot of things change in 5 years. It's usually a subtle change unless there's a lot of things taking place in the community that are shaking things up. So really the only strength that changed from 5 years ago is that Columbus has become a champion of walking and biking. So that is a wonderful strength that we now bring into our arsenal to use to achieve our goals. A new weakness that was developed almost in correlation with that strength is that there have become some unresolved priority conflicts between motorized and non-motorized uses. So because we're biking, or we're more advocating biking and walking, we're identifying more conflicts between cars and bikers. And that is something that wasn't identified in 2016. As far as opportunities, there's plenty of opportunities, 3 new ones that we identified this time around. Expand the bicycle and pedestrian network, the increase of diversity and inclusion as a priority in the region, and then the promotion of innovative transportation solutions. Those are 3 opportunities that we think that the steering committee came up with and appear to be positive and external factors that can impact Columbus. There are 3 additional threats that we identified. There are growing income gaps that we saw as a threat, the increasing health disparities, and then of course, the lasting effects of COVID-19. Those are all things that did not exist in 2016 that have grown or become more prominent now than they were previously. So we capture all those elements, we wrap them together. They help us to build our goals and objectives. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sharif.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. So as Katie mentioned about the 2016 SWOT analysis, and we have identified what has changed since 2016. So we also evaluated the goals we have established in the 2016 long-range transportation plan. So we found that the 6 goals we have, those are still applicable pretty much after the SWOT analysis for the Columbus area. So we are not proposing any change on that. So we are go with the existing goals, so which are supporting economic vitality, encouraging multimodal transportation connectivity, accessibility and quality of life, safety and efficiency, existing system preservation and maintenance, and foster coordination throughout the Columbus area. So these are the 6 goals, and there are objectives, performance measures, and strategies associated with each of these. So we have big matrices describing those. So we are not going into details of that. So we want to take a pause right here and to give you a chance to say like in all the information we share to settle. So if you have any question up until now, we'll be happy to answer.
I agree with everything you've said so far, and I don't have any questions.
Thank you.
I think similarly, a bunch of my notes from the survey that I filled out to get here have been rendered moot. So thanks.
Okay, thank you so much.
Great.
If we could go to the next slide.
Certainly.
So another part of the LRTP update was to evaluate how the Columbus area is doing since the last LRTP was completed. So we looked at some of the parameters related to transportation for the Columbus area, and we put together a chart of a few factors which are tied with transportation, and we wanted to give you a feeling about how the community is working so far. So if we please go to the next slide. So here we have identified that the Columbus area actually grew more than 5,000 people since 2010 to 2018. We recognize that this is a big achievement for a small metropolitan area like Columbus, and many of the Midwestern towns are losing population. So this is a good indicator for Columbus that the population has been steadily growing almost like 1% over the last 8 years or so. And with the population growth, we have about 1.6% annual employment growth for Columbus, which is also another good indicator. And with this population growth and employment growth, we know that there are more transportation activities, more people are driving, they are going to access their jobs, performing other trip purposes and so on. But the Columbus area as a whole, with their transportation network, they are doing pretty good to keep the travel time to work at a reasonable level. So by comparing travel time from 2010 to 2018, we have found that it's almost at the same level, both at the city of Columbus and also for the Bartholomew County. So that's a good achievement for this area. One thing we found that it's a little bit of concerning, which is the transit ridership, that the transit ridership is steadily declining since 2016. And we saw that there is a 12% reduction in transit ridership from 2016 to 2019. But we also want to let you know that this is a nationwide trend. This is not something specific to Columbus. We have seen this in other communities, and also we did some research and we found that this is sort of like a nationwide trend all over the United States. And another important component of any transportation plan is safety. So how the Columbus area is doing for in terms of safety. We found that it's actually mixed. In terms of total crashes, it showed an increasing trend since 2017. So the number of total crashes increased from 2017 to 2019. But at the same time, one of the objectives of the safety goal was to reduce number of fatal and severe crashes. And we found that in 2019, actually, we had the lowest number of fatal crashes for the 5 years of data we analyzed. So this is in brief, the progress report for the Columbus area in terms of the LRTP. So at this time, so since we have talked about the LRTP goals and we also talked about the report card, we would like to hear about the existing transportation issues from the Columbus area residents. So we put together 2 poll questions. So I would request Katie to conduct the polls. So Katie?
Certainly. So earlier today, we used these poll questions to poll our audience. You're welcome to use the poll everywhere feature, or if you'd like to have a discussion with the group on the chat with us today, I think that we could probably have a pretty great in-depth discussion. But the question that we're asking at this time is, what is the most needed transportation improvement for the Columbus area?
Katie or Sharif, would you be able to share some of the responses we received in the earlier session today?
Certainly. If you don't mind, I'm going to pause the sharing and go back to we'll be able to see everybody. Stop sharing. There we go. So you should be able to see everyone now in the gallery view.
Yep.
And give me just a moment while I pull up those responses.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
I'm sorry to throw you a curveball with that.
No worries. I did have them downloaded and
yeah, so the question we're trying to get at is, what are the existing transportation issues in the community that are problems today? So we can make sure that we identify those and are aware of them as we start to think about what we might want to do in the future.
All right. So we asked, we had 2 specific questions. And so in response to what is the most needed transportation improvement, we heard a number of comments related to connecting the People's Trail through downtown, public transit access to Walesboro Industrial Park, or some sort of reliable transportation to get to those manufacturing facilities, improving public transit, bike lanes to schools and parks, making it easier to access commercial stores via biking or walking rather than depending on a vehicle, public transit to Woodside Industrial Park. And we might take a moment to clarify with everyone here, is Walesboro also Woodside, or are those 2 separate parks?
Those are pretty much synonymous.
Okay, wanted to be sure. And then bike access to tourist destinations and connecting people to the trail through downtown. So the trail in downtown came up twice. a lot of trail connectivity, and a lot of transit access to industrial centers were brought up in the discussion.
One thing I would say in that regard, this is kind of a general comment, but intersections in general, whether they be traffic signal improvements, pedestrian improvements, roundabouts, things like that at intersections, I think are becoming a higher and higher priority all the time, and it falls into the safety category a little bit too.
Yes, if you'd like, Jeff, I can go ahead and share some of the safety questions that also came up.
And Dave,
Sure.
is the motivation for that primarily safety, or are there congestion effects that you're trying to address with those improvements as well?
It's primarily safety. If you can find congestion in Columbus, I'll take you out for lunch. Real congestion, that is.
Yeah.
Well, our next poll question was specifically to safety. It was, what are your biggest transportation safety concerns? And so we open the floor to you to share your biggest safety concerns in Columbus.
Yeah, I think my thoughts and comments kind of connect to both, but one of my ongoing concerns is the connection of basically everything south of, I'm going to say Southside School, 11, State Road 11 from downtown to the Walesboro Park. I have seen multiple kind of NMT conflicts with pedestrians. It's a narrow road, it's a narrow right of way, and it's about the only way to get from multiple residential areas to downtown or the Walesboro Park. This is purely anecdotal evidence. That's where I've had scary encounters of bumping into cyclists there at night without lights. I think some sort of dedicated bike ped space along that road would be worth a consideration. Yes, I think that's both safety and sort of a general thought. I'm going to stop talking now.
No, wonderful. Thank you
Great.
for sharing.
That's
Just to
very
help
valuable.
us, for anybody who wants to hear what was reported earlier today, a number of comments came in. Bike and car interactions on the streets was a safety concern. I-65 accidents near the Walesboro Industrial Park. Pedestrian safety on Washington Street between 25th and US 31. And high-speed traffic through downtown on Highway number 46.
That reminds me of sorry, go ahead.
No, you go first, Jeff.
Oh, I was going to, and Dane certainly contributed as well, but this was going to be a question towards Dave Hayward. Karen Iverson was in our session this morning, and she certainly brought up Envision Columbus and the development that we hope to see along 2nd Street, the apartments and the conference hotel, and sort of asked what the possibilities were to make some progress with NDOT to make 2nd and 3rd Street more pedestrian friendly. I think both to walk along and to cross. And I didn't know, Dave, if there's anything you could share with our consultant team about some discussions you've had with NDOT about 2nd and 3rd Street.
Sure, I can do that. As part of, as Jeff said, part of the Envision Columbus, there was a strong recommendation made to take the 2nd and 3rd Street one-way pair and break those into two-way streets. That's a state highway, so it's State Road 46. So it's not really our decision to make, but we're trying to kind of lead NDOT along and at least consider it. We had WSP do a traffic study for us, and we're in the process of making answering some questions and comments from NDOT at this point right now. I think if you pick up a planning study just about anywhere in the country that's been done in the last 5 years, there's probably a recommendation in there somewhere that one-way streets be converted to two-way. And so I'm taking the recommendation that we've got currently and kind of asking the questions, what are we really trying to accomplish? And, you know, is this the right way to accomplish it? Is there some other way to improve the attractiveness to pedestrians, improve pedestrian safety? Maybe there's other things that we can do that'll be more effective. And so that's kind of where we're at this point. NDOT has been aware of the study, and we've met with them once, and they didn't run us out of the room. They listened carefully and asked some good questions and made some comments. And as I said, we're addressing those right at this time. So not sure where that's going to go at this time. To kind of further complicate, or what really caused us to do the study was that we have a redevelopment project taking place along, really it kind of spans both of those second and third street corridors. And the developer was aware of that study and said, we want second and third to be two-way streets to help our development be more successful. And I have not had the opportunity yet to go back to them and ask why or what they really want to accomplish. So we're kind of in a little bit of limbo on that at this point. But we're working on it and studying it and trying to figure out what to do with it.
Okay, now that's great, Dave. Thanks for sharing. Do you have an anticipated date when that study will be complete? So we'd be able to look at it and factor it into what we're doing here?
I hope we can get it done before the end of the year.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Question just for my.
Go ahead,
Sorry.
please.
I was just going to ask a quick question for my general information. I am relatively familiar with the Kentucky context because of where I work. What roads, what state highways are actually state-owned NDOT highways in the area? I don't know if that's Dave or Laura or.
Well, I-65, of course, is owned by the state. State Road 46 is owned by the state. State Road 11 going to the south, you mentioned earlier. US 31, of course, is state. And State Road 58 in the southern part of the county. State Road 9.
Okay.
I think that's about it.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
So a follow-up query, Jeff, to you. Is there a map which shows the roadway ownership in the Columbus area? Or any shapefile or anything like that?
They're not in a straightforward fashion that I'm aware of. And I think another way maybe to answer Dane's question, and this might help you also, is, we don't have any situations where there's a state route that's not state owned. So if it's got a state or federal road or highway number assigned to it, it's owned and under jurisdiction of Indiana Department of Transportation.
Okay, yeah, that's what we also found during our existing infrastructure analysis part. So I was thinking whether something is different in some part of downtown or anywhere. So all right, good to know. Thank you.
Right, yeah, not the case for us. One other thing I might mention, and I think we've talked about this with the consultant team a little bit, and this goes to Dane's comment about State Road 11, that we have been, I think, pursuing kind of parallel strategies on State Road 11. And one of those you can see with the construction of the new overpass project, and I'd say really to Dave's credit, which was, that project kind of extended People Trail connection, a multi-use side path on the west side of State Road 11, as far as possible from that 46 interchange and started to make that infrastructure available down that highway, which is good, because I certainly agree with Dane's concerns. The sort of the parallel path we've been pursuing is the sort of development of an alternate route that would parallel State Road 11 and would basically run, we'll say, from the intersection of County Road 450 South, which is basically State Road 58 extended to the east. So 450 South and 175 West, north to the intersection of State Road 46 and Morgan Willow Trace. So I'll guess maybe a half mile or less to the west of State Road 11. And we've had some opportunities with some change in land ownership along that route that's made that more of a possibility. And then we're also working in collaboration with Columbus City Utilities, who are pursuing a sewer main extension along that same route to, so we have the ability to purchase right-of-way together and coordinate path and route. And that would be a really significant change in that we could basically build a new terrain alternative to State Road 11, where we could get appropriate width and adequate bike ped facilities and those types of things. So,
Mhm.
you know,
We could build that. We could build that road up above the 100-year flood, so it would be pretty much an all-weather road, where the existing State Road 11 floods several times a year.
right, absolutely, yeah. Something else that our current plans really point to. So, and I guess as we think about how this long-range transportation plan update goes forward, you know, in 2016 there was a real emphasis placed on east-west travel, and that was kind of in the run-up a little bit to the overpass project on 46, which is now finished. It also recommended some upgrades to Lowell Road, which are in design at this point. So I think as we think about updates in the long-range transportation plan, this issue of north-south travel, really from downtown, you know, we'll say along or parallel to State Road 11 down to Woodside, Wellsboro, maybe takes the place of that east-west discussion that we had in 2016.
That's great feedback, Jeff. That's great. Okay, so basically the overpass then at 46 and State Road 11, I know that was a bottleneck previously, and you had the railroad crossing there, and I know that was an issue. So it sounds like the overpass has taken a lot of pressure off of that, to the point that you think east-west connectivity is not nearly the concern that it was.
I would say so. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I think between the overpass and COVID, we've pretty well knocked down the traffic problems on that side of town.
Okay.
You know, the other thing that was in that 2016 plan, which I will confess was always a favorite project of the planning department. It looked great in two dimensions. Was something we called Bridge B, which was another crossing of East Fork of White River, kind of roughly between State Road 46 and Southern Crossing. You know, I think in reality that is a tremendously expensive project that, you know, maybe isn't really as relevant given the investment we've made in 46 at this point. So that might be something we want to talk about a little bit further, but I think that's part of that discussion as to whether we shift kind of focus away from east-west travel to this north-south issue.
All right.
Yeah, I think that kind of conversation maybe couples nicely with the downtown discussion about the you know, conversion of the one-way couple to two-way. You know, that potentially having a second east-west corridor over the river to the south potentially creates more of an opportunity to do that, the project downtown.
Potentially, and the modeling of that Bridge B, I think was really favorable in terms of accomplishing some of those goals in 2016. But and I don't know, Dave, if you want to jump in on this, but like I said, my suspicion is that, you know, given the commitments, both financial and sort of emotional, to the overpass project, it feels unlikely that we're going to advance that Bridge B option anytime soon.
I think practically speaking, it would take at least 10 years of our federal allocation to the MPO to build that and build nothing else in that time, maybe even more years than that. So yeah, I don't see that being moved very quickly.
Yeah.
So just a curiosity from my end, a bridge like that with a price tag as big as it does it, I would assume, you know, looking at federal programs, possibly the Build Act or infra, is it serving any higher goal that could be region wide or maybe relief off of Interstate 65?
I doubt it. Relief on I-65 is probably going to come in the form of adding travel lanes, which they're doing south of State Road 46 the next 2 years. So if we could get ahead of that and use that for some relief on I-65, maybe, but that ship has sailed, I think.
Okay. Yeah, just thinking of what other opportunities out there. If this is certainly a priority for you guys, looking at other opportunities of ways to make it happen if it meets many of your goals.
By the way, my computer is locked up and I can't mute, but I can still hear and talk. So I'll try to be careful what I say when I'm not trying to talk. But
Okay.
I do have another engagement at 7, so I'm going to have to leave about 5 till.
Well, we can, do you want to jump back in here, Sharif, with the future transportation discussion?
Yeah, let's do that. So for the future transportation scenarios, we wanted to go back to what was done for the future land use scenarios in 2016, and then going to the transportation options and like that. So what we found that in 2016, 5 land use alternative scenarios were considered. So basically, there was one scenario which was just baseline using the current trend. Then there was one alternative with no southeast growth. There was one with no northeast residential growth. And there was one with the no east side growth. And the last one was the high infill growth. So the infill growth is something that any new development on a new land is not preferred. All the development will be focused on the downtown area or core of the region first. So those are the alternatives which were considered. And what we wanted to know through the participants is where they want to see the future residential growth in the Columbus area in the future. So do you want to see it in the downtown? Do you want to see it in the midtown? Do you want to see it in the north side, east, south, west, or any other place? So in our survey, we have these options from A to G. And if you select G, other, then in the chat box, you can say which specific area you want to have in the consideration for the future residential growth. So this is going to help us to build the scenarios for the 2020 LRTP evaluation. So that's the purpose.
So you want us to try to predict which direction the growth is going to go or where we want it to go?
It's your preference. So what do you want to see? So the question is, where do you want to see the residential growth? So it's your preference,
Well, my preference would be to try to grow the downtown and
so that will be option A.
yes, but I
Yeah.
suspect that the the northeast and the southwest are where the growth will, much more growth will take place.
I think I too have taken too many planning courses not to agree with everything Dave just said.
So the desire,
Good job,
it sounds like the desire is for downtown infill. However, there is also an understanding that it seems like there's pressure to grow. And you said on the north side. And where else?
Northeast and southwest.
Northeast and southwest. Okay.
So from Dave, from the city engineering perspective, I'm kind of curious, is there motivations there to prefer the infill growth because of the cost of supplying infrastructure to those sites is less than trying to provide utilities and infrastructure out to new greenfield sites on the periphery?
Oh, I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer why I formed that opinion, but I've just been to enough planning sessions over the years that I guess I've been brainwashed.
He's got the planner bug.
Well, and I might share, I think we've been pretty bullish on pursuing infill development and promoting density where appropriate, so not only downtown, but again, wherever appropriate, within the existing confines of the city. And I think we've been so good at getting everyone to drink that Kool-Aid. I've heard the mayor, quite unprompted by me, sort of describe the benefits of infill development and why we want to see that happen, which is always good as the city planning director to sort of have your elected officials share those comments without any urging, which is great. So, I feel like our input from the earlier session was supportive of infill development as well, if I remember right.
Yes, it was. When we did our results, it was 87% of participants were in support of infill. And then there was that 17% was other. So the other was to be determined upon figuring out where that individual was looking for.
So based on what Dave mentioned, I think that the development pressure is more towards the northeast or southwest. So the 2016 land use scenarios are actually considering those, like, what if there is no northeast development? What if there is no southeast development? What if all the development are on the west side? And then looking at the transportation impact, because wherever you build, that's going to generate the traffic. So that's the demand side. That is where we are going to have travel demand. And then the impact will be on the supply side, which is the transportation network. So I think the scenarios are good in terms of land use. The infill scenario is already there. And one of the studies which we reviewed, we found that the downtown density is actually slightly higher. That also explains why you have a reasonable travel time to work, although you have more people and more jobs. So that's all good in terms of the planning and also public works working together on that. So the next topic of discussion was, what were the 2016 transportation scenarios evaluated? So Katie, if you please advance the slide. Okay, so one of the scenarios was the road diet and roundabout scenario. So there were at least 6 places in the Columbus area which were chosen as good candidates for road diets. We all know about road diet, but just a brief description. It's conversion of a 4-lane highway into a 3-lane cross section, and typically the middle lane is either a median or a 2-way left-turn lane. And also there were approximately 12 to 15 locations which were considered for roundabouts. So that's the road diet and roundabout scenario. Then the next one was the transit service scenario, which considered a new service to the outlet mall on the west side, and also another new service to the industrial area on the south side. And the third scenario was non-motorized transportation scenario, which assumed that, okay, all the subdivisions will have the sidewalks and all the recommended bicycle tracks, and also the sidewalks will be improved, and what will be the transportation impact. And the last one was the east-west connection scenario. So a new proposed roadway on the south side of the Columbus area was considered for evaluation, and a grade separation along State Route 46 and some roadway improvements. So those were the transportation improvement scenarios on the supply side considered in 2016. So as a follow-up question after this, we wanted to know from you that what did you like to see different in terms of transportation in the future? So do you want to see new innovative technology? Do you want to see more roundabouts, road diets being implemented? Or like, anything else, like new roadway, north-south connection Jeff talked about. So like, that's something we want to hear from you.
That's a big question.
All of the above, is that an acceptable answer?
Yes, it is.
There are no
Yeah.
wrong answers, so that's great to hear.
Yeah, it's an open-ended question, so there is no wrong answer. Yeah.
I still think the road diets are important and need to be in there, and the roundabouts probably do also. One of the things that we're kind of dabbling in right at the moment is what we call mini roundabouts or small roundabouts. They don't take nearly as much right of way and don't cost nearly as much. We're hopeful that those will be effective traffic calming measures and will work well for us moving fair amounts of traffic. So that's something that we hope pans out, and if so, we'll plan to use those more and more in the future. I think one of the other things that we've done recently, definitely since 2016, is we've kind of zeroed in on what our bicyclists and pedestrians want in facilities. And what we've learned is they don't want to be mixed with vehicular traffic. So we're going more towards separate trails, side paths with some green space between the curb and the trail, things like that. So those are kind of the top things that I can think of right offhand. And with that, I'm probably going to have to check out here and get to my other appointment.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. That's very helpful.
If we need to talk more, you know where to find me.
Bye, Dave.
Bye.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
Not to put you on the spot, Dane, but what would your wish list for transportation of the future look like?
That's a great question. And since I am the low representative of the public, I'm happy to kind of just beat a couple of my hobby horses pretty quickly and let everybody go to their evenings. I think Dave hit on the road diets, which I think are exactly right. One that I had written down on my little sheet before this was the stretch from Washington between National Road, and I think it's about 11th Street. It becomes, I think there's some space on the right of way there where it would be nice to do some bike ped oriented things to connect some of those northern neighborhoods in the Rocky Ford area to downtown. Yeah, I know that pavement is pretty stressed already. It would be interesting to incorporate a bike lane into a possible repaving project. That's pretty specific. I'm also a fan of roundabouts. I think that's unsurprising based on the things that I've said already. I don't have off the top of my head I would be interested to see what some of the thoughts are on the 31 Washington intersection. Because that is the only place in town that I've ever experienced congestion, just like full stop. That's the only place where I've ever been annoyed in my car.
And you
I'm trying to
said
remember some of the
31
other
and
things
what?
you had.
31
31
in,
in National Road.
okay.
Or 31 in Washington, right?
Sorry, I said the wrong thing. National Road in Washington. Yes, that intersection. The biggest
National Road
intersection
in
in town.
Washington.
Yes, thank you. Some of my other hobby horses. I would be, and I think, Jeff, the way that you have spoken, you obviously like, you know what you're doing. And you're very successful in a lot of these things, just based on the ability to grow population and employment without increasing travel time. While decreasing travel times, you know, that's not a lot of MPOs can say that. One of the things that I'm gonna harp on is tying transportation network choices to urban design and land use choices. Again, this Washington corridor, I think, is worth thinking about the ways that changing the way the network works through there could have impacts on opportunities for commercial development, extending the urban design of that sort of downtown core further down that corridor. And kind of on the other end of it, I know we just finished the road that goes kind of in Car Hill Road. They just finished that bridge and a repavement through there. Driving through it, I noticed that it feels like the geometric design of the road is built to be about a 45-mile-per-hour highway, and there are non-separated bike lanes on that road. I think that there are sidewalks, and that's excellent. I think that when we build bike facilities, it would make, as a cyclist, it would make me feel more comfortable, even if the posted speed limit is low, that like the geometric design of the road encourages drivers to be about below 40 as well. I'm curious. That's an info dump. I will stop talking again.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Dane.
Thanks for sharing all your thoughts. It's very, very helpful. Thank you.
Good.
Dane, it probably wouldn't surprise you to know that Dave Hayward's gotten a lot of speeding complaints about Car Hill Road.
I am, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, and I will just share with you, again, Dane, kind of given your interests, one of the scenarios that was, I think, brought up in the earlier session today as something that we should look into, and I think our team's on board, is, you know, if it's possible to model what the impacts of sort of both an increase in, or the arrival of autonomous, it's easy for me to say, driverless cars.
There you go.
Yep, there we are. And increased rideshare would be if we're trying to think about long-term trends and how they affect our community. So I think we'll have a good discussion about, you know, including that as a future scenario to be studied.
Absolutely.
I was also going to weigh in. I'm sorry for the background. But I'm also really interested in the National Road and Washington Street intersection, because currently the only north-south connections across 31 are at Weston Edge and then the Hawk Creek Trail. And I fear that some may view that as inconvenient to use the Weston Edge, those that live kind of on the northwest side of that intersection, and they might try to tackle the Washington and National Road intersection without any type of improvement there. So that's something that I'd like to explore a little bit more for the bike ped plan update, and if that's an intersection that we need to take a closer look at.
I agree.
Was that Elliot's commentary on the possibility of driverless cars?
He's terrified of them.
Right.
Clearly. Yes, it was him.
You know, I heard a child crying in the background, and I didn't think anything of it. It's so normal.
Yeah. Welcome to 2020.
Right.
Okay, so
great comments.
that's all very good discussion. Emily, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the traffic crash map with, I think in one of the monthly meetings I already shared with Laura, but I'm going to share the map with all of you, showing like, the locations of traffic crash frequencies and that. And also there is also a separate map for the pet and bike crashes. So if that is going to help in your pet bike plan, you can use that. Okay, so with this, I think we are almost at the end. So we all know that as part of the next steps, we are requesting the residents to complete the survey for the LRTP update. And Katie told us that more than 100 people already completed the survey, and we are so happy that we are getting this much response, and we hope we will get more response. So let's see. And Katie mentioned that the Spanish version, nobody has taken it yet, but we hope that the Spanish-speaking community, they will also have a chance to get access to it.
Yes, so both surveys are available, though it hasn't been used yet, it is available for the public who need it. We're really excited to see that we've got over 100 responses already for this survey. Both surveys are identical. And our goal is to reach a significant portion of the community. The questions in there are really reflective of what you're looking for. And for those who are watching this recording in the future, we do intend to share the results of that survey with the public so that you can see what you and your neighbors have said about what you want transportation to look like in the future.
Okay, so with that, any additional questions or queries? So you can just contact Laura or me, and we'll be more than happy to assist on that. So that's what we have. And thank you so much for the time. And we hope to see and discuss the progress on the project in early spring with the community.
Hey, Jeff, one question. Has there, Sharif and Katie may know this, has there been a road diet implemented since 2016?
Yes, is the answer. And that would be Rocky Ford Road between, I'm gonna say between Taylor and Middle. Is that right, Emily or Laura? We can figure it out.
Okay,
I'm
just
not
curious.
sure.
Yeah, I believe that is correct, Dave. Between Central and Taylor, there was a road diet with the addition of buffered bike lanes.
Okay, great.
So do you know the approximate timeline, like the implementation year of that road diet? Like 2017, 2018?
I believe 2018.
2018, okay. So it's too early. So yeah, I was just thinking sometimes we do an before and after traffic crash analysis to see whether you were getting the safety benefits intended for the road diet. So.
Has the response of the cycling community been positive? Or are they looking at, you mentioned that they're looking for more protected facilities. I was curious if the buffered bike lanes is something that they find, is that giving them sufficient protection, or are they looking for, they're always looking for more, obviously the more protected the better, but is that something that they're using and they feel relatively comfortable using, or?
As far as I've heard, I think.
No, go ahead, Emily.
Sorry, Jeff. I've heard positive responses about those buffered bike lanes. The bike lanes are pretty wide and the buffer is pretty significant. I think it's maybe a 3-foot buffer in some areas, maybe 4. It's in the lanes themselves are wide. So I know the cycling groups really like taking that route. Now, would a young family choose to take that as opposed to being on the sidewalk? Probably not, just because there's no physical separation there. But definitely the more comfortable riders I think, really like the long stretch on their way out of town to the east.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, all of you, once again. Any additional questions or concerns?
Thank you. We will be, this meeting has been recorded, and we'll be sharing the recording with the City of Columbus so that they can post it to their website. For anybody who has questions or concerns, again, the contact information is on your screen, and we'll be sharing more information throughout this planning process. And you can find it on CAMPO's section of the City of Columbus website.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you, everyone.
Thank
Have a nice
you.
rest of the evening.
Everybody have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.